IVM.
Going for parties is just so frustrating these days. I mean, your mom will make it a point to come and tell you how her friend's son has secured a house for her, and your wife will also find out that her sister's husband is taking her on a foreign holiday, while you're wondering why you're the only one who doesn't have a plan for the damn future. That's why I never sleep well during the festive time. Unless... www.hdfclife.com. Select. Done. You know what? I think I'll sleep rather well after all. Live calm. With HDFC Life, click to protect life. The Income Plus option offers life cover and steady income stream, so you're always ready for any expenses that life throws at you. Basically, this plan lets you plan your expenses like you plan your vacations. It's that simple. Visit hdfclife.com to know more and for terms and conditions. कृपया ध्यान दीजिए, the language used on the podcast may not be fit for consumption. We warn you, tread carefully. But listen yaar, don't be so conservative. Yes, finally back to normal, Cyrus. Well, it's not normal, but Cyrus Says conventional, regular, I'll call it that. And I have to tell you, we have a lovely guest. In a few seconds, a beautiful guest will come on. And before I bring her on, I want to just mention Ukraine and Russia, as everybody knows, are not politically going very well. In spite of the fact that Imran Khan himself has gone to Russia to sort it out, but I don't know if that's going to help. Keep in mind that he did bring in the concept of neutral umpires to cricket, so it would make sense. But here's my point. I've said this before. Instead of going to war, you come to the 21st century. You come to a point where man is trying to go to Mars. You know, where you press a button and food is delivered to you. I mean, come on. We've reached a point where we don't need war. War is too medieval. Why can't the leaders just have like an arm wrestling match? You know, and sort it out amongst themselves. I think it's much easier and economies won't suffer. And then, of course, we can get referees involved so that whoever loses doesn't lose very badly in terms of what repercussions rather would be. So here's my point. I speak a little Russian. I'm going to get on the phone after this show. I'm going to talk to Vladimir Putin. I know the Ukrainians do speak Russian as well as Ukrainian. So I'll try and sort this out between the two of us. If it doesn't happen, we'll talk about it on Monday. But for now, folks, we have to find a better solution than war. War is terrible unless they're Australian cricketers. Makes no sense to me.
We face 100 dilemmas every day while raising our children and nurturing our families. Why not let science help us make informed decisions to solve our dilemmas? Hi, I'm Devi Shobha.
And I'm Meghna. We host Big Talk About Tiny Humans, where we will help you unpack challenges around parenting and your child's development.
And more importantly, we will equip you with research-backed strategies that you can readily act on.
Tune in to our podcast every Wednesday on the IBM Podcasts app, website, or your favorite podcast platforms.
Let's quickly get in our lovely guest. She's been waiting here. She said very kind things offline. So I don't know whether she's taking the right medication before starting the show. But she's very talented and extremely overqualified for our show to begin with. I'll come to her qualifications. But first, the name. Offline, I was trying to get that off you. I thought I'd try because I have Bengali friends. I thought immediately I'd get it right with the Shrayana. But you slapped me on the face and said, no, you're raised in Bihar. You're a Jharkhandi who now lives in Delhi and you don't want anything to do with Bengali drawls. And
no, not nothing to do, but Shrayana is the way now. I've grown up too much now in Delhi.
Because in Delhi, mein sab log Shrayana kehte hai na?
Well, not only that, Cyrus, I've even become Sunena, Shrayana. And then, of course, there's the German version, which is Schreiner. But that actually does happen. And then the most annoying thing, which I will just take a minute to say, is everybody keeps saying Sharanya, which I'm very pleased that you did not. So
I did in my head first because Sharan is the name you're more associated with, and then the feminine of Sharan. But so all that comes to your head. But I try not to, if we start with the wrong name, I've learned the hard way, especially when they're Indian names and they can't be that difficult if you just look at them for a little while. Then sometimes the guess, you can't come back from that. That's just a basic disrespect because of lack of interest in knowing a name. So I try, I'm saying if I did that and you got angry, then imagine 1 hour of you not happy interview after that. And I'm calling
Cyrus,
you
you have far more consideration than many others, let me just say, because I have been on countless things where nonchalant, they're just saying Sharanya, despite being told. So thank you for thinking about the pronunciation. It is Shrayana.
What is the pet name? Bengali?
I'm not telling you.
I'm not telling you.
Yeah, you're close.
I'm close, right?
Close.
It's the
Yeah,
same
just close.
syllable said twice. What's that
Exactly.
famous Madagascar one? Moto Moto. A name so
No, it
nice,
is.
I got to say it twice.
Yeah, no. But I'm not revealing it.
But we can find out
On.
while we speak on Google. Is my young producer Silvery as petty a mind as mine? And that's all he's researching. That's what we research, not your contribution to
I
literature.
I have done such a good job of keeping that incredibly embarrassing nickname off
But
the
the
internet. Good luck to your. We'll
but
see
the
at the end of
friends,
the show if they can find
when
it.
the friends were over in your teenage, younger days and all that, I'm sure they picked up
Hmm.
your mom or dad or somebody in the house saying it. So come on, I don't like being called
Cyrus.
Silu because it sounds really effeminate. But that's what my parents used to call me affectionately. You know how you call a big dog, like Poo Poo.
Yeah.
His real name is something else. It's like that. Not that I'm a big
No, but
dog, but you know what I'm saying.
in our
Huh.
home, I think it was understood that it was so. I mean, just imagine. Now, I think I'm really exaggerating
So
the
even they were
embarrassment
embarrassed to
associated.
say it.
They knew, yes, exactly, because it came from my grandparents, and Tuntun is certainly not it, but it is close to that. But
Tuntun
I
and
will
Moon
leave
Moon
it
are
at
famous
that.
because of cinema. But I'm saying, look, I've got enough friends, so I'll keep trying. We figure it
Huh,
out. I'm
theek
sure
hai.
we can.
Maybe at the end
Yeah.
of the done.
Yeah. Okay. So now, just before we get into the book, by the way, the book is called Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh. It's based vaguely on Desperately Seeking Susan, the worst picture I've ever seen in my life, Madonna. And we'll get to that in a second. But you've got a fantastic, background in the sense that DU and then Harvard. It's not easy to get into Harvard. It's not easy to get into DU these days.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your background in terms of studies and what you were doing, and then of course you got into economics and the multilateral development bank, which you'll explain to someone like me. I have no
Yes,
idea what that means, but it sounds very colorful. And
it is.
I guess the men wear ties and stuff like that. It's another
Yeah,
world.
it's as colorful as my nickname that I will not reveal,
Oh,
which
damn
is
it!
why it
No,
says
listen, we have very petty
multilateral.
listeners
But I,
also. That they
yeah,
won't be able
no,
to think.
no,
You have to give the nickname.
okay.
We can't
But
go
I have to
forward.
tell you something. Statistically, Cyrus, I believe now, actually, you're right. Getting into Delhi University for an undergrad is statistically more improbable than getting into a graduate program at Harvard. So this should tell you, just what's
Well,
going on.
you want to digress there for a minute because I
Yeah,
talked to slightly younger parents, or rather slightly older parents whose kids were getting into
yeah,
college and stuff in both Mumbai and Delhi, and the mark sheets and all. They just make sense. We've discussed this with other panelists on the show.
yeah.
The maths is just ridiculous when you're getting a 98% and your kid can't get into the top college. I'm like, what? What do they get? 101%? Where? I mean, how can you have a sense of failure for a child who all their life has been top of the
Yeah.
class and is in the top 5%, but still can't get into? I mean, there's something seriously wrong with that.
In fact, it's funny. Just as I actually get into this a little bit in the book, and we'll talk about the book later. I'll discuss my background as you asked in a second. But in the book, I do discuss, writers and people who actually study our education system forever have been saying it's just creating a culture of so much negative feeling and anxiety that then just spills out into like our politics and our general culture, all kinds
Maybe,
of things,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
right from such a young age, we're making people feel like they're just not good enough. Carrying that around, I mean, what kind of civilians will we build, right? I mean, it's very dangerous, actually.
And I'm taking your thought process a little further, if I may, in my perverse way. It's also telling you that maybe you have to cut corners and figure out ways to get
Yeah,
ahead because you can't get ahead
absolutely.
through merit. If meritocracy is not looked on as a proper thing, then you can't blame people for looking at the so-called jugaad of India, which is
And
now
not
which
only
is now par for the course. Let's say to get
Yeah,
it
and in
anywhere.
fact, Jugaad, as we were just discussing, Jugaad is almost like now our economy, right? Like people who help you, and these are actually services that people are providing. These are things that, as unemployment is growing in the country, those kinds of jobs are sort of growing, which is a bit worrying. But I do think, there are a lot of very helpful things people have suggested time and time again to make the education system a bit more realistic, maybe open up seats, have more facilities. But the current equilibrium we do have, Cyrus, is one where we do have a generation of young people who then work so hard. And imagine people even with privileges feel this way. So those who are already at a disadvantage just growing up in a village or growing up in it's tough.
It's
It's a very difficult
it's
scenario.
it's all it's actually it's comical. You got to look at
Yeah.
the humor part of this
Yeah.
because I mean overachiever and we all grew up with kids. I think you must have been one of those DUHU and all that. But I'm just thinking those 5 kids that you grew up with in school and college who are clearly super hardworking, super sincere, super dedicated.
Yeah.
They get
Yeah.
nothing for that. They get nothing for that, and that's just ridiculous. If the apex of the academic world
Yeah.
has to turn to jugaad or whatever it is to survive, I mean that's just ridiculous. And whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, you have to
But
take over.
Yeah, and I think I faced it. In fact, I wanted to go again. So many things I'm
By
not
the way,
mentioning.
how did you do in your 10th or 12th or whatever it was for
I did
the
okay. I was in like my early 90s. I actually was a humanities student, which my parents were very worried
wow, you got
about.
90s in the humanities streams.
Yeah. But that's because I had
Back
math
in
and
my day, the
economics.
highest was 71 in St.
No,
Xavier's.
no. Yeah, no. But that's ICSE, right? We had
No,
CBSE.
the 12th.
The
Yeah,
12th, yeah. No, and so for us, in fact, it was high, but I think it was high because I was doing math and economics. So we were allowed to do humanities with
too
math.
late. You've trapped
And as you can
yourself.
tell, yeah, no, as you can tell, I'm
Shrayana
a
has
complete
trapped
nerd.
herself. No, now it's too late. We know you're super good at studies because again,
No. I mean,
Silvery is
I'm a
in a
nerd.
room googling that year that wasn't sort of thing. Yeah, you topped clearly. No, I
No,
want to
and
bring it up
no.
because sorry,
Go
but I want
ahead.
to bring it up only from the point of view that again, it's almost like people go into one path and then suddenly find another path. Not that it's completely diverse from the old path, but
Yeah.
maybe writing was your calling. In which case, maybe economics wasn't such a necessity for you.
But Cyrus, my book is about economics. In fact, the book is written to make economics much more accessible using a film star as almost an
Which is
anchor.
more than
We'll talk about
the
that.
government has done. Yeah, go on.
Well, yeah, and I let you say that. But yeah, no, I hear you. But the thing is
Can you read the
that
chat? Sorry to cut you.
yes, I can read the chats. I'm
Now they
quite
want to know the
amused.
comparison. We'll do this in the second half. Silvery's marks.
Done.
He's going to have to. Yeah, we're going to go one on one on that.
Done,
Sorry, go
done,
on,
done.
go on.
But but I did want to say, actually, going back to disappointment, even with those marks, okay, and I had really, as as you were just describing, I had, worked really hard. I was super sincere. I really wanted to go to this one very fabulous college in Delhi, and I went for an interview, and I completely bombed. I was so unprepared.
Stephens.
These and like they asked me all these
Jasus
questions, like I'm
Brocha.
supposed to be
I'm there for
sophisticated.
you. You might as well
I
tell
was
us your
supposed to be
nickname. I'm going to find
no,
out.
you'll find out. Acha, so you guessed, no? So this is the way we'll go. But the
Right.
thing is, I went for this interview and and there were all these like kids who had prepared. They knew, the way they were supposed to comport. And I just didn't come from like, I guess, no
How do you
one in my
prepare for
family
the
had
interview?
people had a sense of what the kinds of questions would be
From
that
former
they would talk
students.
about literature. Yeah. Like I think people knew people, and I went to a school where actually I didn't know very many people who went to Stevens, and so I was very cut up, Cyrus, I have to say. And then I had a choice at that point because I really wanted to study economics. It's not just, I mean, I really do just love the subject. And anyone who reads the book will sort of pick it up. I'm very affectionate about it, as weird as that sounds. And I am totally weird about it. And so I went to Hindu college, which I loved. And I'm so grateful
You went to the
for.
rival. It's like you didn't get Coke, so
Yeah.
you went to Pepsi. I love it. What a lovely
Yeah,
story.
exactly.
Yeah. That's a
Exactly.
spiteful moment. With Khunnas, you decided to take the pants off Stephens in the wars that followed, the debates,
No
etc.
pants off going anywhere. I think, the state of Delhi University is taking its own pants off, I mean, given the way things are going. But I had a great time. And after I did my undergrad, I decided I wanted to work for a bit, which really did frighten my parents because my parents just thought, okay, she studied economics, she should just do an IM, the typical management exam, go, take up a job quickly.
Corporate line, parents?
Yeah,
Dad?
exactly. Parents, exactly. My mom comes from social work, but dad is HR, corporate. Used to work at Moria Sheraton Hotel, managing staff, and it's a tough job. And so they were very keen. But I decided at that time was my time to rebel, and I said I've said yes to everything usually that's been suggested to me. But now I really want to. So I decided to work, in fact, for a feminist think tank, some NGOs who are doing projects on women in the informal economy. So, low-paying jobs. And I just wanted to go travel the country, use
Sorry, but
all of
it's
that.
really
So that's
funny
how it
you say
happened.
that. Your idea of rebelling, if I may say so, was not to marry a 55-year-old out-of-work biker. Instead, it was, I'll go and get a job. I mean,
No, I'm not
again, is
marrying
this
a
the Bengali side?
55-year-old. Yeah.
What rebelling is this? I will work hard to
No.
teach you a lesson. What?
I will work very hard and I will do something completely different. And in fact, now my parents, I mean, honestly, so the Multilateral Development Bank where I work is the World Bank. And,
Oh, it
yeah.
goes by many
And
names.
yes, it does go by many names. It is a multilateral development bank. And, one of the things I learned now is that I'm now on this path on my career. I mean, yes, it's not radical per se, but it's very unusual in my family because I think everyone has just thought that she'll go do management, steady job, things right? And you know what that's like when you do something that's somewhat different from, I don't know, from what your immediate
Shrayana,
circumstance.
just 1 second. Whatever you say, there are 2 or 3 professions I would think in middle class India where all of us grew up, where you
Yeah.
cannot, your parents will never not be proud. Let's
Yeah.
face it. One of them is
Yeah.
medicine, I think, for
Yes.
sure. And another one is writing. There's no way that deep down, I know that writing doesn't equate to money and all that, but
Yeah.
if you write and you write, of certain quality, and obviously it would be, the parents deep down would be, because ultimately there's a certain arrogance about having a child who's a medical
Of course.
practitioner or a real academic. I mean, forget being
Yeah.
an overachiever startup multimillionaire. Oh, it's all great, but so
but Cyrus is. Yeah, but Cyrus, is interesting. So my parents are thrilled that the book is out. But as people who read the book will know, the book also has some very personal bits about my own sex life and my own love life in there.
See the pages, then we'll get more people to buy fast.
No.
Indians, get to the point, yaar. Page 87
there's a specific chapter in there because the book is a sort of history of, womanhood over the past 30 years.
It's
and
a bad
I'm very
idea.
much there.
I said, it's a bad idea if you say it's a specific chapter, because they're going to go barter. They go on Amazon, they go, chapter hi chahiye. So, 50 ka
I'm happy to say, Cyrus, that HarperCollins India is not doing it by chapter sale right now. If you would like to read the chapter, you would have to read.
It's coming soon. Everything
Probably,
gets abridged and edited, for sure.
But with my dad, what you were asking about, like pride, I mean, he's really thrilled. But I know he's had some awkward moments because someone read an excerpt from the book, which was actually some parts like this. And they said, oh, this is fiction, right? And then my father was like, no, it's true. And, I think it's a big shift for him to be able to say that. So it's interesting. He's super happy. I mean, they're so proud that they check everything. They know the reviews better than I do. But I think it's been a journey for all of us.
I don't understand why people worry about sexual imagery, because the greatest writers of our times, even Shakespeare's filled with double entendre. I mean, everybody. It's not like it's a new thing. So I think once they've accepted you, look, that's the way it is. You've written, and that's the way it is. Now that you've advertised that, we don't have to advertise the book, because there's two types of readers: the salacious reader who's going to just read that, and the serious one.
No, that's in fact the most boring part of the book. There's stuff about other people's love lives and professional lives, which I think are more interesting in there.
Wow,
that's my final plug.
So let's get into the book then.
Sure.
Let's start right at the. Okay, obviously this Shah Rukh metaphor or this Shah Rukh anchor that you've used, you'll have to explain it a little bit. Let's not give away the book. We'll give away just bits of it, but just set that up a little bit for us, please.
So, Cyrus, the book starts in 2006, actually, when I was like 23 or something, 23, 24 at that time. And I had just done this, I'd studied and I was sent out to, like, what, in social science, they say is the field, right? So they send you out to a slum. I went to a slum in Ahmedabad, and I was supposed to do all this, like, long, typical questionnaire. They give you lots of questions and you're supposed to answer and ask. All these young women who were working and making garments, Cyrus, as well as agarbattis, incense sticks at home, earning about a quarter of minimum wage. These were remarkable women, Cyrus.
What is minimum wage at that time?
I think it would have been around, I'm going to say 25 rupees per day or something like that. And these women were making, for 1,000 incense sticks that they would roll, they would earn like 8 rupees. And yeah, no, I'm not kidding.
Slavery.
It's all there. Yeah, of course. I mean, the current state, I mean, it's, and what was amazing when I went there was actually all these women were actively fighting, Cyrus, to improve their wages. They were part of a union. And they were really completely on top of their own lives. And so I went as like this young, foolish person with my like kajal in my eyes and, that khadi kurta. And I went, and these ladies just looked at me utterly bored. They said, what questions are you asking us? I know my wages. I have no interest in discussing this with you. Let's talk about something that interests all of us. And so then, I started talking about the few things in a country like ours are very few things that all of us have in common, right? And so therefore there's Bollywood. And so I started asking people, who's your favorite actor, as a sort of research break, right? And everywhere I went, Cyrus, I started in the slums of Ahmedabad to the villages of Uttar Pradesh, forests of Jharkhand. Everywhere I met mad Shah Rukh Khan fans. I am a mad Shah Rukh Khan fan. And what was fascinating to me is, the book, as you yourself just said, it's he's a metaphor. In fact, the second page, I say the book is not about him. There's enough journalism and writing about him. I don't need to.
He buys it and says, what? What the hell?
No. It's not about him, but it is about him in that all the women in the book use his films, his scenes, his interviews, his songs to talk about themselves, to talk about what's happened in their lives, to talk about how difficult it is for them to earn money to watch him, and how guilty families and our society generally makes women feel about doing something as simple, Cyrus, as just wanting to follow and love your favorite actor. It's just the simplest thing. And so the book follows the lives of these different women I met right between 2006, 2007, all the way up to the pandemic. So that's 2020. So I repeatedly interviewed them. And it's a story of their lives. And through that, essentially, it's a comment on what has happened to women in the economy. And of course, we remember the economy is a subset of our broader society, right? Because all these women are fighting very aggressive norms to just be able to work, because they just want to work. They want to make their own money, exactly as you described, through some incredibly oppressive workplace environments, very poor wages, and yet they're all
But who exactly
hustling and
exploits
working.
them? Who decides this? The person.
It's typically the person who would employ them. So, for example, there's an entire section in the book on, in India, that we have a lot of women who work in manufacturing, Cyrus, work in what we call home-based job. So they'll make something at home, right? So all these women I was telling you about, the incense stick workers, garment workers, they're making things at home. There's typically a subcontractor who tells them, okay, you do like X number of stitches and I'll give you a certain amount of money. And then the subcontractor usually supplies to like someone else who's either an enterprise owner or another contractor. So there are long value chains, right? Just the way we have supply chains. And so everyone takes a cut. So typically it's either the subcontractor who decides what the wages are, or it's usually even just the employer, depending on, how long that chain is. But the thing that I think everyone should know, and I discuss this in the book a lot, is that we just have no regulations about this. I mean, even if, yes, of course, if you have laws, it's not like they'll be implemented. But if you have a law, at least you have a norm, right? And these women were extremely empowered. If they knew that there was a law, they would fight. They would then say, well, this is what the law says. But right now, we don't have standard norms of how women who are working from home, how should they be remunerated? There are norms for women or men who might be making garments in factories. But this home-based work, which Cyrus, 64% of manufacturing jobs in India for women are within the home, because they have to take care of kids, they have to take care of lots of things. Families are very scared of them going out. So there's a big need for regulation there.
But this practice is also, I think, amongst the fashion industry, all these fancy names and all that, the actual work is done by these, what is the right word for them? Darzis, or I don't know, don't want to put anybody down.
Yeah.
But down the line, the craft is, the artist actually is somebody else in many, and they get nothing out of it, right? They just get like peanuts.
Yeah, and it's interesting. In fact, there's an entire section, in fact, on women who make garment work, and some of it actually does go into not high-end fashion brands, but even sort of local brands in Bareilly and so on. Because I follow some women who make embroidery in the villages of Rampur, which is in Western UP, and
we've ostracized Bareilly forever from the podcast.
No. In fact, what I was going to say,
attack Mumbai.
No. But what I was going to say to you actually was that there, in fact, the contractor himself went to the suppliers and said, I think we need to pay these women more, as the stitch is becoming more sophisticated. So people have their own norms, of negotiating this. I don't want to paint everyone with this sort of, black one brush. But we do need a law.
It's fair to say the entire artisan community, or whatever you want to call people, who are skilled. They're skilled actually in their own way.
They're not being paid.
Creative. Nothing. Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the merchant or the guy who's directing the commerce part of it is getting 95% of the. That's not correct in any other culture.
I totally agree with you, and which is exactly why we need not the regulations mean everyone, as I said, will implement it, but you need norms, right? And once norms exist, people are smart and clever enough in our country to then fight based on norms, but we need them.
Sorry to go back to Shah Rukh for a second, because what you said is interesting. So from your survey, and you've gone, as you said, UP, Jharkhand, Gujarat, so it's across India in a sense. And you're telling me that Shah Rukh is more popular as the ultimate sort of female, I won't say fantasy, but female icon for females, as against all the others from his generation.
I'm not, So I noticed, I found a lot of women who are Salman fans as well. But I have to say that I think for women, at least where I was going, I want to, constantly preface it with that. I just found Shah Rukh fans over. He was just, and the one funny thing about this, Cyrus, is that everywhere I met his female fans, almost next to them were their brothers, husbands, fathers, who just hated the man. Like, it was just this, it was like a jugalbandi. So wherever there were like mad female fans, there were men who he made them so uncomfortable. And there's also a sociological reason why he made them uncomfortable.
Why?
It's because
I like him. Maybe
I know. But he does say, he actually himself in an interview once said that he has a lot of female in him, which is interesting. And the reason why I know a lot of these men were uncomfortable, because I do get into it in the book, is that one of the sort of, again, going back to that word metaphor, with being a fan of Shah Rukh Khan, is that in a way, a lot of these women they live in very conservative families and circumstances. Some of them are young Muslim women or Hindu women where they're supposed to cover their heads. There's ghungat, parda, mobility is very restricted, Cyrus. They just can't be out and about. And in these communities, for women to basically be sitting together, giggling over an image of an actor, right? And to say that this man is attractive or that I like his body, right? And in a way, what are you signaling? You're signaling that, yeah, like if, I would like to sleep with someone like that, or I'm interested in someone like that. It makes communities so uncomfortable because we are paranoid when it comes to female sexuality, right?
So the men are
going
jealous.
back to
That's
what
it.
Yeah, there's jealousy, but I don't think it's
Because
just jealousy.
they feel they're inadequate next to the great Shah Rukh Khan.
I've always said that he's made men, South Asian men, feel inadequate since 1992, like since the first film
It's
release.
basically the cult of personality. It's not really about his looks. Quintessentially, he would not be the greatest looking guy ever, but he's just the guy everybody likes for some reason. He's got that.
I think so. I think there are three things there. One is, of course, the fact that, he did so many interviews. So even women in low-income communities, in fact, Cyrus, they didn't have the money or they didn't feel safe going to cinema halls to watch his films. And remember, this is 2006 till around 2011, when the phone and OTT and all of this was just not happening. So people had to go to a cinema hall or watch on TV. And even back then, I noticed that even if they haven't seen the film, they've seen like snippets of an interview. They've read, like they've asked their brother, even if girls who can't read properly, they've asked brother to say, oh, I see Shah Rukh's pictures in the local paper. Can you tell me what he's saying? And they will all tell you all these wonderful things that he said about women. Because, in many of his interviews, as from the 1990s, he used to just talk about women in a way I think was very different from many of the icons of the past. Mm-hmm. And these women lapped it up.
So he's the first feminist male hero that we have, in a sense.
I don't think he's feminist because, let's face it, he did Dar and Anjam.
No, that's I think cult of cinema. That's not.
But I don't think his icon. In fact, I asked a lot of women. Most of the women in my book don't know what the term feminist means. But the women who do, because they're elite, I also follow.
Jo marne khate. That's basically it in India. Standards are low. Sorry.
But the thing is that for a lot of women who do understand what that word means, they would always tell me he's a woman's hero. He's not a feminist icon. I think that's the best way to explain it. I
always thought of him as a family hero. He's the hero everybody can watch together, because it's all you mentioned, I think, about his fragility, which I didn't totally get. You're saying that he plays. Is that what the women like? That sort of the fragility which the other heroes don't dare show?
So I think it's two things. One is, he's always playing men who cry beautiful tears. And they, the part of the crying is, and part of the crying, Cyrus, is that, he plays someone who's always very aware of another person's feelings. And I think women in our society, and in fact, this is true still globally, are always expected to do like what we call the emotional labor in a relationship, right? Like you're the one who's supposed to figure out how everyone's feeling, keep track of other people's needs. And here was a man who was actually doing that for his lover, for the lover's mother, in all these films, there are all these imagery. There's so much imagery around that. So that's one. So I think, there's a kind of anxiety about the gaze of the other. And in a country where women are constantly under surveillance, right, about their bodies, how can you hold yourself? How are you coming across in public? It's not surprising to me that women really connect to that imagery of a man who actually takes the female gaze very seriously. He's very interested in what women have to say. And the second part, Cyrus, is that women speak much more in his films. So I measured how much dialogue time women have in his films. It's there right at the end of the data annexure. And they just speak much more than any of the other contemporary big stars. So he's very different.
From a maybe percentage point of view or whatever, like 10-15% more than the average other film hero?
Yeah. So for example, like in Dangal, which actually has phenomenal female performances.
Which is a female sort of almost driven film,
Exactly. But what's interesting is if you listen to it, the narrator is male and Mr. Amir Khan just has significantly more dialogue than, the women in the film. And there, I think women's dialogue, it comes out to be around a quarter of all dialogue. Whereas if you take a DDLJ, right, which is also like as big a hit as Dangal was, like if you look at Money and all, there almost 50% of the dialogue is women. And there are more female characters as well. And so it's interesting. I think we've had this shift. I mean, this is just a digression, but I think we've had a shift in Indian cinema where we have all these films that are apparently women-oriented, but women don't speak in them, Cyrus, and it's interesting. Whereas in his films, they may seem soppy and regressive, and they're not like radical per se, but actually women are speaking. And in fact, they have lots of scenes where men and women are constantly engaging with each other about their feelings. And I think for women, that's very potent. It's very potent imagery.
But Dangal then, or maybe the protagonist is really him, the father figure or the father coach figure, etc.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we mistakenly perhaps think that the protagonists are the girls.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not defending them. I'm just saying, but it can't be his. It's not like he's not in charge of the dialogues in the film. So that's just like a coincidence. The directors, the writers,
absolutely,
the other characters are in there. It just happens to be that this organically happens, that a Shah Rukh film tends to include more women perspective, women point of view, and the women are more comfortable with Shah Rukh because he seems to, his empathy level with women is far better than anybody else's. This is what I'm getting so far.
I,
As a
I
student,
fully agree with you.
uh,
I fully agree with you. But I will say one thing, which is, of course, but these are films that he's also chosen to be a part of. Like, if you look at the
true.
last film he did, Zero, which I don't think any other typical Indian big hero would do, it involved two powerhouse female performances. The women were very much, and in fact, the women in the film were telling him, "You don't measure up to us," and that's a fact that's made quite literal by the fact that he plays a dwarf in the film. I don't know very many big, traditional movie stars who would
You have
take
to say
on roles like that.
horizontally challenged, or they'll
Oh,
bomb
thank you.
Ukraine again.
Okay. Oh, shoot. No,
Too
we don't.
late.
Yeah, no, I don't on that.
No,
No. Huh.
no.
But no, but yeah. So I do think we have to acknowledge that these are films he's part of, but I do also want to say one thing, Cyrus, here, which is that often in the way we think about celebrities, and this is something I'm trying to argue. I don't want to hit people on the head with it, but it's there in the book. Often when we write about celebrities or we think about them, we kind of think that the celebrity has made their persona and then everybody else is just a consumer, right? Like of that persona. But when you read the book, you'll realize, Cyrus, actually all the women in my book, like villages, slums, posh Delhi houses, whatever, they are all co-creating him. They are taking bits and pieces of his imagery, of the films, of the interviews, and they've created this idea, what I call a more progressive masculinity, right? Like all the things that you just said, that, the dialogue acknowledges women's feelings. He's always in the kitchen in so many of his interviews, as well as in the movies. These are all things that we think are like not very interesting, but actually to a lot of women, they really hold a lot of value. And I think it speaks to women's, actually, I think I always say that his extraordinary icon speaks to the sort of ordinary frustrations of so many women. And I think we should recognize when we think of him or think of stars, it's not just them, it's also the people who are watching them. There's like this kind of, again, using that word, there's a jugalbandi between the two. And then to each woman, he actually means very different things. There's a woman in my book for whom he's a professional self-help guru. She follows all his lectures and like she literally writes down in a note. She has a diary where she writes down all the things he says about career disappointment. The things you and I were talking about in the beginning about exam results, how do you deal with, professionally, just pursuing your professional ambitions, which is very important for a girl because, she has additional layers to deal with as a woman in the workplace. And then for somebody else, he's just this really sexy guy. And then for someone else, he is, someone who is telling her how men can show up for women. So I think, it's interesting. It's not like he's one standard persona.
True.
He's very different things to different people.
He's comfortable not being the man's man or playing the man's man, and
Yes.
paradoxically becomes the more manly man out of them all for the women.
That's so true.
Who appreciate the universality of his personality in that sense. I get what you're saying, but you don't have to sell him to me. I'm a huge fan, having met him a few times and worked with him also. I think
how was that? Can you tell me what's he like?
He's got that gift. I keep saying this when people ask me. The two people that Bill Clinton and him are the two people that I've met who immediately they have that gift of making the other person feel special. And you have to understand these are hugely. These are really, really important people, influential people in the generation that they lived in, or beyond that also. In case of Shah Rukh, and so in both their cases, so he does little things. He'll call you by name. First name, he'll always remember. He will hug you in public. He will shout out your name. He does little things like that and makes so suddenly the whole room looks at you and makes you feel like oh, he must be somebody. Why is he doing that? He's also very good with, and for me it's very important. Not that I'm a communist, but very important to see how they are with the lower grade of our working community. And he's very good with the sports and he's very playful. I don't want to say that we're similar, but so that's why getting along with him is very easy because we're both always talking to people, and so that he has a common touch. That's a gift. Bill Clinton had the same thing. I worked, had one show with him, and the ability to talk to each student about their culture. He had done his homework so well. He spoke immediately about, say, the Republic of Congo. He went straight into the details about their political situation, their aid situation. There were 22 countries represented there, and he was just glib in the sense that he was trying to show respect to that culture and country in his conversation. His knowledge, because they've all found that he knew so much about their little local world because it's the mighty America, etc. And Shah Rukh does exactly the same thing. So I totally get what you're saying. He's very, very good with people. He's got a great presence. Everybody likes him. I've never gone to a set and somebody saying, "I hate this guy, yaar, wo time pe nahi aata hai," which he doesn't come on time. That's another story. But yeah, he's just great.
So
And
inshallah, I hope he reads the book, or I at least will get to see him at some point. I hope.
I want him for Prime Minister. I think he's a great brand ambassador.
I
If you saw the
completely
Letterman
agree
interview
with you.
that he did, did you
Yes,
see the Letterman interview?
David
He was
Letterman. Yeah,
fabulous.
yeah, fabulous.
He was. I mean, punch for punch with David Letterman there, and it was a pleasant punch for punch. It was great jousting with two guys who were both witty, funny, and having
Yeah.
a great time. And that's him. So yeah,
Yeah, and he was cooking chicken for him again. See, like that thing that I was telling. So
back home, with his ponytail and crazy things like that. Yeah, so I think it's a great choice that you've made. Having said that, I don't think there is anyone to compare with him in terms of that universality that he has, where everyone can sort of relate to him. But let's quickly, because we'll have to take a break quickly. Can we just get a little bit into? I mean, you've said things like only 5%. I don't know whether this data is true, but 5% of Indian women choose their own husbands or soulmates.
Yes. This is the India Human Development Survey. It's a very robust, rigorous survey. And what they ask is there's a very specific question in there about socioeconomic attitudes. And essentially, they say, do you exclusively decide who you marry? Do you decide your husband? And this should not surprise us, Cyrus, at all. There was recently a Pew survey that came out in the middle of the pandemic. And even then, through all of this, Indians are saying, yes, we will only marry through arranged route, and we will marry within our caste communities. Those norms are so strong. And, I know you and I live perhaps in a bubble where things seem a bit different. And in fact, with the book, what I'm really hoping is some vision correction happens, that this is actually the country that most women are occupying, and even men for that matter. And so, yes, it's women's romantic agency is heavily compromised in a country, which is why they like a romantic superstar, sort of supply and
also
demand.
who's walked the walk. He's a Muslim boy from Delhi who marries a Hindu girl, and they're both very flexible with their religions. It's a very nice
great
face
story.
of India, the family, and of course the whole Aryan episode also, I think, endeared him more to people.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Himself, etc. Just sort of dignity and self-respect that he showed there, and restraint. When I'm sure if he got Mr. Wankhede in a room, it would have been a little different, but that's for another day. So we have to take a break. Unfortunately, Shrayana, you've just spoken too much, and there's no time left in this show. So we'll have to call you back. No, I'm kidding.
I'll be brief.
I was just one question about, I've written down 5 notes, and of course I can't read my own writing, but one thing, because you mentioned sort of, before we go to break, do you think women compare their husbands to Shah Rukh? When you're talking about him playing this almost like cult figure?
No.
So
No.
Is Mr. Sharma being compared to the Shah Rukh character that Mrs. Sharma likes?
No. I think he is essentially 3 things to all these women, and they know that they are not real, but they're very important to them. One is he is purchasing power, what I told you, just being able to watch him. And he represents a successful man, right? He gained from liberalization. These women I say that they don't want to marry him, they want to be him. They want not his meteoric status, but his economic success. They want to do well for themselves. So that's one. And he's really a great story around that, right? Just mobility and doing well in your career. I think the second thing is what we talked about a lot. He listens to women's feelings. He does domestic work. He does emotional labor. I think there's not a comparison, but I think he's almost a benchmark to which they say, well, I would like my sons to grow up to be a bit more like that. I don't think the husbands
so much sexual as it is like a role model.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And then the third is, of course,
bad news. No.
I think I think all these women, of course they think he's wildly sexy. Yeah, but that's like, hardly do we need to discuss it, really. I mean, that's like a bygone conclusion forever. But I think those 2 things. And then the third thing, actually, which I just, 1 second I want to spend on, which is that what the women do say about Mr. Sharma is that when a woman wants to follow up on her career ambitions, when a woman becomes a mother, and all the data shows this as well, she is immediately expected in India to leave her job and become a full-time carer, right? Like the in-laws, Mr. Sharma's parents will say so, and so on. She is looking to Mr. Sharma to support her and to stand up for her choices. And very often, Cyrus, and the stories in the book play this out, Mr. Sharma doesn't. And so when he doesn't, and this woman is feeling lonely and sad, and I realize this is a slightly bleak note, they switch on a Shah Rukh song. And this sort of soppy fantasy of a man who has like open arms and will always support you and will stand up for your decisions. I think that's a function they wish they had in their real life. So I don't think they're comparing Mr. Sharma to Mr. Khan, but I think they're looking to Mr. Khan when Mr. Sharma disappoints them.
I was thinking that in the end of the day, it's almost like it's surreal, the whole situation. So there's no point, because Mr. Sharma will fall short. I mean, we all will when you're looking at a celluloid figure, because you're only seeing it with rose tinted hues sort of thing and all.
Yeah, no, No. And I want to be very clear. None of these women, when I say they're desperately seeking Shah Rukh, none of them are chasing a celebrity, and none of them are saying, oh, well, my real life doesn't measure up to celebrity. Nobody's foolish like that.
He's just
playing a role for them. He has a
role,
psychological function. He provides comfort, escape, entertainment, and he is a role model to some of them as well. No one is comparing him to a real...
What better than a guy who's singing a song in your head to help you get through some negative feeling you have?
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds stupid, but musicals still run. And you don't have to be gay to like musicals.
Absolutely.
And nothing wrong with being gay. Gay is great.
Yes. But the thing I will say, good you did. But I do want to say, we look down on Hindi film, no? Like so many of us sort of say, but it's not soppy and it's not realistic nahi hai. You read the stories in the book and you realize what a wonderful function he plays, the lack of reality in them.
And when there's lack of reality and yet the credibility of the actor, Amitabh did that in the 80s at least, and 70s. So I think that's another feather in his cap. But I think we've praised him too much. Now we have to stop it. And we have to praise Amir and Salman also.
No, we have to praise the women of India who want to hold on to jobs. I think those are the women.
Let's start naming them. Suhasini, Shalini, Suha.
Exactly. Okay. Full list. It's such a meager minority that I would like us to...
no, we will just take a 2-minute break and we'll come back immediately and discuss very much more about the book because we need to ask you more questions. Silvery will join us with his mark sheet. So here's the break. Stay with us. The book is called Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh. It's by Shrayana Bhattacharya, who is Bengali via Jharkhand and Delhi. It's a long story. Read the book. Here's the break.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round is on Me, Gauri talks to Jinilia and Ritesh Deshmukh. They share how they gave up non-vegetarian food and started their plant-based meat venture, Imagine Meats. On Cyrus Says, Aisha joins Cyrus for their annual traditional Valentine's Day special. They debate who's the better parent, who's the better driver, who's the better haggler, and a whole lot more. On Hans Vani, catch the story Bhim Tola Ki Chokri. It follows the story of a young city woman who travels to the country to uplift the rural community population. On the Life Manifesto, Zarina explains how we can gather the courage to love again after being deeply hurt. And on Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurav debate whether a wealth tax can solve economic inequality in their series Ek Sawal Kahi Jawab. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. The word of mouth really helps. Also, don't forget to rate us on whatever platform you're listening to us and check us out on YouTube. You can check a list of all our channels at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and HDFC Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Here he is.
Hey. Good morning. Hello. Hi, Shrayana. Hey, Cyrus.
Hi, Antariksh.
Hello. You're a Shah Rukh fan?
Huge Shah Rukh fan. This has been like a dream podcast for me. This is just talking about the entire episode. I could literally do this for hours and hours.
You're one of those housewives in Jharkhand?
Exactly. That's exactly yes. Totally relate. Yes, absolutely. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, let's get this, the elephant in the room, out of the room fast. So how much did you get in the 12th standard?
I got a 12th standard. I got 73. Yeah. That's what I got. 73.6.
Okay. She was in her 90s, which the way she was modestly saying it, I would think it's upper 90s or mid 90s and definitely not early 90s. So she didn't want to, it was difficult. It was embarrassing for her to actually say exactly like 97.
Correct.
So she was I'll just say 90s to bring it down a bit.
It was not 97.
Yeah.
Cyrus, did you get 90s in any subject?
I only got I told you my marks. I got 90 in English, 88 in history and geography, 0 in everything else.
Oh, yeah.
I've been shouting at the education system saying let people just study what they like. When you study what you like, it's not studying. You have fun. So I love literature. I love history. I can do it all day. No problem. You don't even think you're working, right?
Absolutely.
But how can you do physics? Reflection and refraction, I can only spell them at the end. I do, oh God. Anything in my hand, geometry, trigonometry. I mean, horrible. Oh God, don't talk about those experiments and drawing those things and graphs and, I hated that so much. 73, his father gifted him his 4th car. He was only 16 or 17 years old, underage, but back in the Powai, you can do what you want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is a running gag, inside gag. Shrayana, you have to understand the background here. He pretends to be a poor boy, a struggling comedian.
I don't
but he's got some 15
I'm
cars
very
at
bored.
home and a thriving family business. So, they
Yeah.
changed the avatar to show the world that they're struggling. It's like the kid who gets dropped off by the driver away from the school, studying.
Yeah. Yeah, bhaiya. Correct.
Paisa hai.
That's
And then
actually a true
comes
story.
slowly.
Oh God.
I know. What do you think?
Yeah.
You're the first.
Oh, man, that's
Every
insane.
school has those guys, yeah.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
try to act all, I'm really middle class, yeah.
Also,
No,
that's
अंतरिक्ष से मुझे लगता है Delhi Prince का slight feeling आता है मुझे.
Correct.
हाँ,
He's
so
a
they
modern
like
school
it.
का beta for sure. Don't
हाँ.
worry.
my dad was in the government, so also we used to get the ambassador to drop us to school. The ambassador with the red thing on top, the red light on top. So that car, though, especially, I was like, no, there's no way you're dropping in front of the school. You have to drop me like a kilometer away. I'll walk. That's way better. Very embarrassing. But
so look at the social embarrassment you get for being rich. Also, nobody looks at it from that point of view. Influential rich kids also suffer.
Tough.
It's a reverse suffering, but
it
is psychologically damaging for them because they just don't want to be looked upon like that. All we all want to be is the same. This is ridiculous. We are communists at heart. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's get back after Nawab Malik. He is searching Silvery's location. Yep.
Yes.
They really should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave all those kids on the boat alone. Get the guy who owns the boat. That's him.
Yeah. I also have to now find a police officer I can rat out to extend the whole thing.
There's always a police officer. Don't worry. It's a big country.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the book, Desperately Seeking. Before you ask any question, I'll just... what's the word aristocrat? So one chapter has this... What is that?
That's the chapter about. That's the only chapter where I emerge in the book. It's essentially to suggest, there's Delhi mein, there's lots of these between Delhi and Rajasthan and also certain parts of India. There are all these feudal, erstwhile Rajputs, who used to.
You're telling me. Oh God, yes. Everyone claims to be a prince, but if you ever go back home with them, there's no castle.
Yeah, no, that's true. So I, for a while in my life, dabbled in a romantic liaison with someone who was one such person, and it taught me a lot actually about class dimensions in Delhi, which is why when I was joking with Antariksh that he's Delhi ka prince and all of that, like I mean it very seriously. It's so sociologically.
It's a big insult, Silvery. I thought it was just like a flippant remark. It's a
no, I did not mean
insult.
She didn't mean
angst and pain of a bad romance with a fraudulent young man.
No, she doesn't mean it. Yeah, she didn't mean it as an insult, but I feel very insulted. But it's fine.
Yeah, that you should. But I didn't mean it.
But he could have been a prince. I mean, in a way, that comparison is good if he's a real prince.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an aristocrat, and of course it's like aristocrat, but prat because they're slightly douchey.
English for but just let's understand so we've got this we've done too much on Shah Rukh. Let's just understand, because you're also talking about the economic exploitation per se of women and across the country as a phenomenon. And also beyond the economic exploitation, there's a social exploitation that comes hand in hand with that, and perhaps repression. Just you tell me, because I'm saying all the wrong words, I think.
No, you're not. I appreciate. Firstly, Cyrus, we should just recognize we are in the bottom 5 of the world when it comes to the number of women holding paid jobs.
Is it true?
Bottom 5, yes. When it comes to economic freedoms, there's the World Economic Forum. It comes out with the bottom 5, with like Pakistan, Syria.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not. This is
Pakistan,
all there, and
Syria,
all the data is referenced in the book.
Where we are.
Yeah. And we're also in the bottom 5, Cyrus, when it comes to the number of men helping out in housework. Which, by the way, there's a parallel there. Okay. Yeah.
Why is
now
he actually helps. He's actually
the book is, as you said, the book is, if you're even not a Shah Rukh fan and you're not into Hindi film, if you just want to know what's happened to women in the economy, read it. There's all the data, everything that you asked me, it's all in there. And I think there are a couple of things that have happened, Cyrus. We've had the sharpest, most countries, Cyrus, when they grow, and we grew post 1990, usually women then step out of the home and start working as well. We actually are one of the very few countries which have gone the exact opposite direction. So from 2004 till around 2018, we have had the largest global decline in the number of women in the workforce. In 2018, only about 23.3%. Yeah. These numbers should shock us. These numbers are well known by economists, people in sort of the Delhi policy scene. But we need to have large public conversations about them. We should get really angry and startled.
So this is an illusion that we feel that there are more women in the workforce today. And when we talk about absolutely, Cyrus. And in fact, when I was saying to you that we live in a bubble, that's the bubble. We live in a bubble where we think we live in New York, where we have all these professionally ambitious women, people like me and my friends. But that is not the country. We are such a minute bubble. In a city like Bangalore, okay, forget Delhi's anyway, in the north, forget that. A city like Bangalore, 44-point-something% men hold regular, proper, salaried jobs.
The same percentage for women is something like 17%. There's a full data annexure in the book at the back which has all this.
And
it is a
hijabs
very
have just
alarming.
been removed from their jobs. So
exactly,
no
which is
just
just getting worse and worse. So in fact, we are going into a world where as we have grown economically, we are almost becoming more conservative when it comes to women's place outside the home.
That's scary.
It's very counterintuitive. Considering, we have women in the media, we have female VJs, more actresses, all this stuff is going on. But
I
want
like the way you jump to female VJs as the empowerment of the century.
Yeah, no, it's a job. It's a job. It's an unusual.
Job.
You're paying. You're getting paid
they were
for
better
it. It's a job
than the male
outside
VJs,
the home.
that's for sure. Yeah.
But I do think.
Oh, Shrayana just got stuck.
The moment you abuse VJs. Again,
yeah. No, don't you talk about women getting jobs.
Yeah.
They took a job away.
I felt like I just sort of lost out for a second.
Yeah,
because you were pro-women. The people who run our Wi-Fi are very repressive people. I'm so sorry about this.
They wanted.
Just say nice things about
less women with jobs.
They want less women with jobs. But no, but I really, Cyrus, I mean, the one thing, we are in a very alarming situation because 7 out of 10 women between the ages of 30 to 34 are basically exclusively at home. They're working, by the way. They're working for cooking, caring, cleaning, mothering, all of that. That's all work, which, by the way, is not rewarded, not acknowledged.
Right.
But 77% of our labor force in India is male. And it's only become worse after the pandemic, because what we see with the pandemic is post the lockdowns, men have gone back to work. Out of 10 working women, 5 have just not returned. And so we are in a very dire situation. So if we really believe, because I do think women being in paid employment is a very important tool for social change. I mean, I think our dynamics start to change. We know this, right? Like lots of things start to just shift.
But it's what you're saying is not making sense to me. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's because, engineering students are more females. Back in my generation, there were very few. MBAs, there are more females. Back in my generation, very few. Medicine has more people. Law has more females. So,
no, all of that is true.
Why? So then it's not adding up.
No, so what's happened is we've certainly had more women studying. There's no doubt about that. There are more women in college. There are more women studying. The literacy rates for women have gone up. But it doesn't mean that they go out and take a job. And number two, it doesn't mean they hold on to a job after marriage. So marriage and motherhood, Cyrus.
Marriage is the problem.
Universally,
marry.
Or marry late. And there are shifts happening there, but not significant.
This is why there's sex in the book?
Oh yeah.
Don't marry, you can have sex. Yeah.
Totally. And the interesting, in fact, so many of the women in my book are like the first generation of women to have casual sex or to date, because they've chosen a job and then they're holding on to the job and they meet men through work and all kinds of other things. And so there is actually some dramatic shifts that start to happen, right, in our society when women start holding on to jobs. And that's very important. So yeah, Cyrus, you're right. There are more women studying. And in fact, one of the reasons people say that the employment rate has gone down is maybe younger girls are spending more time studying. So they're no longer working in sort of ad hoc jobs that they may have done earlier, like giving tuitions or so on, which, by the way, all of this is recorded. When the government records if you're working or not, part-time jobs, helping family enterprises, all of that is actually reported as work. So
tuitions as part-time jobs is very lucrative. You know how much I'm paying for tuitions? And in fact, the 2 tutors who come here to my house are both female. So I'm doing my bit for women empowerment and for demonetization because they want cash. We give them check. Yeah.
But I think to answer your question, that's the pipeline.
Sorry?
My take on demonetization?
Very successful venture?
No, not at all. In fact, for me, it's the dividing line between whether I can even talk to you or not, to be very honest. Because if you think that it just has devastated, and it comes
like racism. It's like where you draw the line of the person. Okay, if you're a racist, that's it.
Yeah,
okay, got
exactly.
it.
Yeah, it is for me.
Culture for you starts with pro-demonetization. Wow.
Yeah. If you're pro-demonetization, I really don't have anything to say to you. Because it's just
that's great. That's a great. I wish people would take these stands. These stands make sense, actually. Sometimes I wonder why you want to defend, some stupid philosophy here or there.
It'll be on my Bumble profile, like, do you like demonetization?
I was told that demonetization will remove terrorism because they won't get funds to, do terrorist acts. Apparently, that's not happened. So, who do we call? Is there a line we can call and discuss and chat with them? And
Sadly, no.
They won't
There's
answer,
no demonetization hotline.
All our old mothers and fathers stood in lines and all that, grandfathers. I mean, all that's like a crime, waiting for money, anxiety-ridden, panicking.
Exactly.
And as you go down the social class, even worse anxiety. So what the hell?
Absolutely. And there are now studies coming out, Cyrus, essentially saying that it has really hurt productivity long run as well. Because people shifted out of businesses collapsed. And then the pandemic happened after demonetization. So it's just become the economy is
Silvery
really
had to give up. Shrayana, you have no idea what he suffered. He had to give up 2 cars. Okay, because they were both being paid by EMIs with cash. You have to give them up.
And then we bought 3 more after that, but that's not related.
Again, going back to the Delhi Prince phenomena. So I think I'm,
I'm entitled to 3 cars.
You want to quickly tell us about that romance?
So no, it's in the book. So I will not tell you anything about that.
That's important. Please buy the book, everybody. Buy the book. The book is, it seems like a very interesting book because it's got this very strong message underneath where it talks about, in a sense, women empowerment. I suppose at some point it will come out like that. Energizing women, using the metaphor of our greatest cult figure of our times. I think let's be fair. I think there's no dispute there. We're all 3 fans, and also there's sex. I mean, for people like me with limited intellectual capacity, you have that. You can just go, okay, don't understand. Ah, he takes off blouse. Sorry, he takes off her blouse. Sorry, he takes off blouse. Totally different sex.
I'm not going to comment on whether that line is in my book or not because I may lose readership. So I'm not going to say anything. But what I will say, I'm not going to say anything. But what I will say is, I think if people walk away from the book, even with just that number in their mind, 77% of our workforce is male, what is happening? And Mr. Khan is such a helpful anchor in this conversation. I'll be really thrilled.
No, I think what you've said just now 5 minutes ago is even more scary for me when you're saying that between 2004 and 2018 we've gone on a decline in terms of women employment, which makes no sense. And I'm going to now go and research this myself to find out. I'm not calling you out on that at all, but I'm just saying that we have this sort of cover on our face telling us that this is what it is, and we look around to our females from our generation, etc., and what they're studying and where they're going. But this is obviously not giving us the right statistics. And you're talking about women in villages, tribal areas, all across where there's no growth in terms of their empowerment.
And Cyrus, the numbers are robust. So the government, which in fact for a while the government didn't want to release the employment data. I don't know if you remember this. This was in the news like a few years ago. The numbers are robust, and the statistical machinery of India does a fairly good job of picking up employment. I mean, we may say that they don't measure all of women's work. Many a times, and I've run surveys where you ask a young woman, are you working? She may be helping her father's business, but she initially will say, I don't have a job, but I help my family. Sometimes that's recorded and sometimes that's not. So there's that issue. But even with that, Cyrus, they do a good job and it can be compared over periods of time. I'm not the only one saying we have
the survey is conducted by women.
Yeah. But surveys are conducted by men and women. You have both kinds of investigators. And in fact, you're right. No, Cyrus, what you're saying actually is true. When you have female investigators, they do a better job of picking it up. Unsurprising. But this has been The Economist has run an entire story on this. The New York Times has been reporting on this. We are in a serious crisis when it comes to women in jobs. And I urge everyone to think very carefully about what they can do in just their immediate lives to help. And I have some suggestions on that.
I've got an idea. I should have another wife. In that case, 2 women will be employed. So I've done my bit. Silvery, what about
Being your wife is not employment, Cyrus.
Being my wife? 100%. Are you crazy?
I think it's a job.
She's at the office and I'm here doing this podcast.
Exactly. I thought it's Yeah. But marriage is a job. That's true.
There's also, may I ask, are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right. Silvery,
she just says she's on Bumble. I'm just saying. She just says she's on Bumble.
To know more, check out her profile.
That's right. Which has a demonetization filter right there. Yeah, so.
There you go. But that's important. Those are the awkward conversations you don't want on the 4th date. You might as well get it out. I mean, fair enough. I'm totally for it. You suddenly can't find someone who's completely right-wing and you didn't pick that up for the first 3 dates. All right. Sorry, Silvery, you want to ask anything?
I have a quick question of my own. Okay, I'm sure just having Shah Rukh Khan in the name is great for SEO, right? It is just fantastic for SEO, right? If you were to write a book with Amir Khan and Salman Khan in the name, what would it be? You can go irreverent.
No, Adriksh, I would never write a book with
Okay, so what books do you think can exist with Amir Khan and Salman Khan in the name?
Someone told me there is actually a book on Salman coming out, which is a much more film studies type of book.
It's a very small book. How to improve chess, chapter 1. How to save back, chapter 2.
In fact, a journalist once told me, "Oh, madam, aap to trilogy likh rahi hai na? Like now after this, there's going to be Desperately Seeking Salman." And I'm not. No. I don't know. I have no thoughts on that. I do know that like with Amir, it would have something to do with teaching because I think he's in that he's always teaching us stuff, right? So it would be like
one more take. One more take.
Yeah. Is that now? See, I trust that one. That might be a good one. One more take.
We're just taking shots at them. Low hanging fruit. Let's attack the politicians. Let's start with that damn Putin. What's wrong with him?
But one thing I do want to tell you, Antariksh, though, with the title, it's yes, of course, it's helped because people love Shah Rukh. But then initially also it hurt a bit because people thought I'd written fan fiction about him, and that was the book.
And the trap is like we did. We spent 20 minutes of our 1 hour plus talking about Shah Rukh, which is fine because you're talking about the perspective of the book. But I'm saying sometimes the message of the book, like you said, it's a metaphor. You use him to understand the women. It's not him per se, but it is what it is. You can't run away from it.
And we had to inform his team. Yeah, I know. In fact, we had to inform his team because HarperCollins had to inform his team. His name is on the title. So you have to sort of tell the team. I'm still waiting when he reads it. Inshallah, he will.
You sent the copy to him?
Yeah.
All right, because we live next to him. Silvery is right close by, so you can just drop it off.
100%. He can also send an additional copy, but I know that it has reached his.
No, I'll just visit his house and I'll give it to him personally. Like while meeting him and all. Yeah.
The last set of chapters is Manath, right?
Yes, I actually follow. Yes, like again, David Letterman. You saw all these fans who stand outside on his birthday, so I went and interviewed everybody who's out there.
Wow.
Just saw Tarun.
And what was the most pathetic story? Who was the guy who said 33 days he's waiting to say hi? Yeah. There's got to be some guy.
I have to say, I think the really strange stories came from male fans who I didn't really follow because the book is not about, fandom per se. It's about women, right? So I didn't really follow them. But the strange stories of people standing outside, sending letters constantly, there's like a giant male fan base there. And they had some interesting stories. I may do something and as a follow-up on that. I'm interested in that. But I didn't hear any, none of the people in my book are, mad fans that way. They just, in fact, just to watch him is so difficult that in itself is like their madness, just to earn the money, go outside, watch him. I didn't meet anyone who was sending letters in blood and all of that. I've heard these things happen, which are quite frightening. But I think all the women in my book and even the men I met, they all just love him. But they're not doing anything which would be sort of, they're not crazy or mad fans in that sort of very obvious, heightened sense of the word.
Silvery and I would stand outside the house at early morning, 4-5 in the morning and shout Shah Rukh, remember?
Yeah, correct. We still do that. Yeah. Almost every day before the
I'll join you next time when you go.
We go to his house first before the live stream in the morning, and we stand outside, we shout a little bit, and then we come back to our own homes, and then we record.
But I'll tell you something funny though. This is the only so outside Mannat, because I used to interview all these people outside, right? And there was a guy who used to sell pani or whatever outside the house because it's a big tourist spot, as I write in the book. People just show up. People go from Gateway of India. Exactly. And so this guy who used to sell pani, he turned to me and he said, "But madam, why are you not going inside to interview sir? What are you doing outside?" He just couldn't understand. So to him, I think I was the mad person.
He was trying to say updated water for you.
He couldn't understand, honestly, Cyrus, or he just couldn't get what I was doing. So I think to him, I must have been the strange fan.
So here's the rub. Maybe the book should have addressed the Indian male. It's not the female who needs to be empowered. It's the Indian male who has to be educated and made aware. So the second book is targeted to us now.
No, in fact, this book, I feel, Cyrus, thus far, so many women are reading it. I would like more men to read it, precisely because I think to have this conversation, you need to know what women are experiencing. How are they seeing the world? So my hope is that, in fact, this book is that book. It is a comment on masculinity, and I hope men read it.
It's amazing how none of us know what the spouse is thinking. Let's just talk from a woman's point of view. None of us know what the wife is thinking or the female folk in the house are thinking about you. That conversation never really happens. The perspective of what they really feel, except when we do Valentine's Day and she insults me and then I find out the truth, Silvery. But we know that these candid conversations don't happen. It's just not part of our culture, I think, where people actually have those conversations from the male side, at least. The female is far more giving when it comes to being a little open and emotional.
Inflation, fiscal deficit, GDP, MSP, NPA, equity market वगैरह वगैरह. दोस्तों, हमने सारे शब्द टीवी या अखबार में जरूर देखे होंगे या फिर सुने होंगे, पर हम में से कितने लोग हैं जो ये जानते हैं कि इन सब का सीधा प्रभाव पड़ता है हमारी सैलरी पर, हमारे इंक्रीमेंट पर और कमबख्त हमारे खर्चों पर. दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है अभिनव त्रिवेदी और मैं बात कर रहा हूँ इक्का दुक्का इकोनॉमी पॉडकास्ट से, जहाँ पे इस तरह के इकोनॉमिक और फाइनेंशियल टर्म्स को मैं जोड़ूंगा सीधा आपकी जेब से. हर मंगलवार एक नया एपिसोड सुने IVM पॉडकास्ट की वेबसाइट, ऐप या फिर किसी भी अन्य पॉडकास्ट प्लेटफॉर्म पर.
Follow me at Instagram and Twitter on Bored Brocha. I'm so bored, I need your help. I need your love. I need your touch. Okay, just follow me. But we've got AMAs, so let's get them.
Yes, we got tons of AMAs. Talking about men reading the book, Ruben David has said, heard about this book from Shrayana's podcast with Amit Verma. Got it on Amazon and read it soon after. Some of the facts and stats in the book are simply mind-blowing. Must read, as Ruben David has said. Ashim has said...
Ruben never has a kind word. That's a fabulous support group for you, because Ruben only calls me names and abuses Silvery's thinking and clothes.
That's exactly it.
This is fabulous, yeah.
Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you, Ruben.
Okay. Next one comes in from Ashim S. He also says, this is going to be awesome. Heard Shrayana at Amit Verma's Seen and Unseen podcast. Excellent. Waiting for this episode.
So unwittingly, we are giving Amit Verma more publicity than Shrayana, so we'll have to change that. We'll just call him Verma from now on. Waiting for this episode, I heard great things about the book. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
These are the first three guys he's picked up. Sorry, not picked up, but found. Males. Males.
Yeah. Yes.
Males being very supportive. That's a great sign. I know this is ridiculous, not a sample study of any kind, but
no. I think it's so important. No, I think it's so important. I'm so happy. Actually, I do want, honestly, because I know women will read it because it sort of mirrors their experience. But I really hope that, because initially a lot of men told me, oh, what is this silly book about desperate women and Shah Rukh Khan and ye wo? And then fortunately, I will actually have to mention Verma, because I think when I went on his show, people then realized, because, he at least asked me, oh, this is about economics. Like, then he understood. And I think as a consequence, it sort of, shifted. So that was very helpful, Cyrus. And in fact, even right now, I think this is very helpful, because I do want people to realize it's not like a bunch of women, like,
it's not like you're selling it differently with the Shah Rukh name and Desperately Seeking. I can see people looking at it, thinking of it as a different sort of book from the title. But yeah, sorry.
No, but Cyrus, one thing I will say about that actually is what you just said, that how we never know what women are thinking and we don't have these candid conversations. I think actually it was because of Shah Rukh Khan that these conversations between me and the women happened, because, it's always safer to talk about someone else, right? Like art has that function, no? Like you can talk about music, but then that's actually saying something about you. If I went directly and asked people, oh, tell me about your personal life, people are just going to be, upset.
They have the intimacy of the thought from the third point of view perspective. I get what you're saying.
Exactly.
That's actually the cowardly way to do it for the man. Generally to feel out from the woman's point of view. By the way, do you like football? And then from there you check out the sensitivity barometer. But just to plug again, there's lots of sex in this book. So people, please understand it's because I'm sorry to say, but economics always has this dryness to it in people's minds. Wrong prejudice, fair enough. You're there to change that. But we must tell them that this is not a book on numbers alone.
No.
It's a human experience, and you're looking at a societal shift that you're looking at and hoping for, etc., etc., etc. And there's sex. Okay, next one.
Right. Next one comes in from Upama Rai, who says, I think Shah Rukh is one most articulate, insightful, and self-deprecating. That makes you connect with him even more. Yeah, that's true.
I think we've sort of, exactly. I couldn't have said it better, though. Those are three absolutely straightforward points about him. And the only thing I always question, and this is my Machiavellian dirty mind where I believe all human beings are evil, is with Clinton as well, is are they just fantastic manipulators of humanity in the sense that they know how to make you feel better? Their PR is so good. It's like a political awareness, acute awareness that some people have. The gift to talk to the waiter in a certain way to make him feel happy, the CEO in a certain way to make him feel happy, the guy on the road who's a stranger to you, the woman, whatever class or caste or foreigner, whatever. How some people have that gift. They just endear themselves to those people, and sometimes I just wonder if it's just a gift and they can just turn it on. They just know how to do it.
I agree with you. And Cyrus was funny, and I see Tarun's comment about how men like you, Cyrus, and Shah Rukh and Obama, and they're all impacted. No, but here's the thing. Women in my book would say, well, even if it's a stunt, I appreciate that it's a marketing stunt, because which other man in the 90s and the early 2000s was doing it? But I actually do want to double down on what Tarun said. I think there is a very strong role that different masculine models can play in our media, in our culture, and especially right now, where like so much of our masculine leaders are all about being stoic and silent and warriors. I think it's very important for a lighter masculinity.
Yeah, no, I think the very fact that you use the word fragile a bit, maybe fragile doesn't necessarily mean the broken person. Fragile means you're able to fall and pick yourself up and accept your fallibility in you or whatever, which the characters that you talk about, and I think even Silvery will realize that's why some men like him as well. No, because he's not the super alpha. With some of the actors want like Salman Khan is super alpha from start to finish. You can't relate. You want him to win. You feel better about yourself through him, like a cowboy movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But with Shah Rukh, you suddenly feel, oh God, he's like me. Except in Dar, he's more like Silvery. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a vulnerability. Go ahead, Anjali.
By the way, I've been asked to point out that my co-producer Vinay has met Shah Rukh Khan before. Just saying.
How do we tell Vinay to fuck off? Because what's the point of that?
I don't know, but he just said,
I'm just jealous.
I mean, okay, just to piss her off.
At some point, he'll come on and he'll explain how and why he met Cyrus.
I'm very jealous.
Manat every morning. I'm calling out the guy.
Listen, Cyrus, I'm telling you this. Now, next time this apparent Manat visit of yours happen, I'm coming and with like the whole gang of ladies. We will watch you scream this name and join you as well.
I'm telling you, he's so good with people. If you call out his name, he waves. He's not the guy who hides. He says he's shy and all that in his interviews, but with a crowd, he's the ultimate. He would make a great leader. He is a leader.
I agree.
He's definitely a leader on a set. He's a leader. You can see that. But in a compassionate, he's not that belligerent leader. He's that compassionate leader. The mix of everything. Vinay is the biggest celebrity on this podcast. Can Vinay's hand come in so she can at least see him? Vinay,
I'm not in the same room. He'll have to put on his video, Vinay.
You're right. You're in Powai. Oh God, you didn't go to work.
What do you think?
Male who doesn't go to work.
He's
doing a bit.
There he is. There he is. Hey, that's Vinay.
Vinay who met Shah Rukh Khan.
I'm very jealous, Vinay.
No, but Shrayana, can I just mention that when you're working at a hotel and you're passing a drink to Shah Rukh Khan, it's not quite the same thing,
Yeah, it's not. No, it's not.
He got a tap on the back and was told to move away by the security. But other than that, it was a pleasant experience. No, we'll ask him. We'll ask him later. Sorry, let's get the next one.
Sure. Just a couple more. This one, Nikhil Ravindra asks, Shrayana, I like the SRK quotes at the start of each chapter. Did you rewatch every film for the book?
Yes, I did. In fact, I had to rewatch because I told you I measured how much dialogue time he had and the women had. That requires rewatching, and in fact, it's not a fun rewatching. You have to like pause, and there's a method to do it. I did rewatch, but I watch his films quite often, so it was a pleasure to do so. But I did, and thank you for enjoying the quotes, Nikhil. He has great quotes. He has great quotes. Oh my God, the best.
Both filmy dialogue as well as in the press or whatever.
Yeah, I've used both. There's some lyrics from songs, and I think like in Hindi there's that word mahal, right? It creates an atmosphere when the reader's entering the chapter. One of my favorite quotes, which I didn't use in the book, and I know we laugh, is that a young woman at a press conference once, who is a journalist herself, asked him, she started complaining about how she was having a hard time holding on to her job, which is, by the way, exactly what the book is about. And she asked him, what is your advice? Because a lot of people ask him for all this like life coach advice.
He has the same problem.
And he turned and he said, I would like to just say one thing to the ladies. Don't leave your day job for a night husband. Which is just a terrific quote, I thought. Yeah. It's my favorite quote.
He's got all these great quotes and points, and even the dialogue, some of them are really good and fun. And all people remember when you do college plays is Kiran, I love you. I mean, that's so unnecessary. Stop it, people. No more Kiran. And Silver, you're guilty of doing that on the podcast 5 times already, so never again. A funny note, one has to ask candidate to Gauri what she feels about him with these pointers. Yeah, he is a night husband, works all day, etc.
I think she'll be happy. It's showing him in good light only. This is not a bad thing.
Yeah. But shooting at night, you have to use light. I mean, if you want to take it further. Yeah. But he's a great family guy. He's always been the family man sort of guy. With his kids and everything else, with his wife.
It keeps coming up in the interviews as well, Cyrus. So many of the women would tell me, have you seen the way he talks about his family, about like his wife? And there's this particular interview. I get into the book because, it became very common in Hindi film press to just shamelessly ask him about infidelity. Like very serious journalists on Doordarshan. Like people be like, how come you're not having affairs? It's such a personal, intrusive question.
How can you say, how come you're not having affairs? Like you're disappointed.
There are questions like that.
You're wasting your life.
This really happened. I get into it in the book. There are like multiple interviews which fans told me, and there was one on Doordarshan, Cyrus, of all the channels saying, sir, how can having affairs? And his response is, I think this is actually now on YouTube. Anyone could go look it up. It is ridiculous, and he had to keep a straight face and answer such a personal, horrid question. But
he's never mean.
He did.
He's never mean. I've seen him at all his interviews and all. He handles all this well. Some people can be really rude to these guys and all that. He doesn't do that. He's always a little naughty. I like that the most about him, that he's got that child part of him is always there. That naughtiness. You feel very comfortable with people like that. I'm very, I don't know about you guys, but I'm very uncomfortable with officious people. They just scare me.
Yeah.
Immediately when they're just, very officious and have that wall, but Shah Rukh is not. He's
and in fact, Cyrus, it's funny you should say this because, one of the things people told me was, but you could write a book about women in the economy, no Shah Rukh, no sex, no jokes, nothing, none of that, and keep it very exactly what you said, officious and serious. And there is a kind of writing, Cyrus, that happens a lot in Delhi in particular, which is like a lot of very serious people writing these serious books about very serious issues, but sadly then regular people will never be able to read them. I think it's so important.
And then they look down on everybody else because nobody's read the book, so they feel a little superior, but the point is they haven't communicated. I get you totally.
Exactly.
You got to communicate. There's no point otherwise. It's like stand-up, right? If you're so funny that nobody gets it, you may have written a really funny joke, but nobody gets it. It's still on you, isn't it? What do you say, Silvery?
Exactly.
I mean, always when the gags don't work and all that, and somebody's saying, but it was really, they don't understand it. This audience is stupid and all. But I'm saying that's not the point. The point is, this is the audience, and this is your job now.
Yeah.
If you want to be superior to the audience, then you're not a comedian. Then you're a politician of sorts because there's a point you're making. You're making them feel small or something. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm superior to the audience. I'm going to do that. Politics. Here I come. Right. Women empowerment. Oh, somebody's already used that. Poor guy said it 4 times without completing the sentence in that famous interview. Yeah. Ouch. If you remember. With Shri Goswamiji. Okay, let's get. Do you have time? Can we do 1 or 2 more?
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Well, sure. This final one comes from Feral Mind, who says, "Did any of you guys see the celluloid gems that were Ram Jane and Koila released the same weekend?" IIRC. I've seen Koila. I don't think I've seen Ram Jane.
I've seen both.
Was it very bad?
Koila is famously, Koila is so famously trolled as a very bad film. It's directed by Rakesh Roshan.
Look, when you've done 100 films, I mean, there's plenty.
Yeah, of course. You have to have some. Yeah, there'll be hit or misses. Yeah, it's a misses. Yeah.
My favorite miss is English Babu Desi Meme. For those who really want to, and it's pretty funny because he'd been playing all these fun NRI characters, and in this film he played an NRI guy who sort of modeled on Mayur suitings. So he's like the son of some business scion who comes to Bombay and falls in love with a bar dancer. So it was interesting. It was very transgressive, but the film. It's another classic.
Okay. Final one. At some point, Cyrus/Antrix will ask Shrayana of her favorite SRK movie. My guess is she will say
because of the women empowerment issues kind of thing. No, not
that's too obvious. I love that movie. I love that. My favorite film is Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na. It was one of his early films. He played a loser in love, and he played him with dignity. And he tries to cheat and hustle his way for approval of his lover, family, all of that. And then he realizes he has to be honest with himself. And I think the acting is stellar. It's beautifully written. Everyone should watch it.
My favorite is Raju Ban Gaya Gentleman. I think that's the quintessential Shah Rukh. And because that's him, he can be both the Raju and the gentleman. He really can. He can be both.
Yeah.
And he has that. I think he's gifted that way. I wish he gets into politics. He can talk to everyone. He can speak in English. He can speak in Hindi. He can pick up somebody else's language. You go put him in a region and he will communicate. He's got that ability.
Yeah.
Shah Rukh, if you're listening, we three will work on your campaign. Yes. Let's discuss our posts right now. I'll take information and technology because I can't even start the computer. It's only right that I have
But I wanted to also say I love Zero, which I know is a film that didn't do well, but I actually think he's very funny in it. There's the beginning where he's kind of
so my favorite comedy of my favorite movie of Shah Rukh's is Badshah because that's I would say a lot of comedy.
That was his heart and soul.
That was very good.
I love it so much.
My first interview was with Badshah. Back in the day in MTV, yeah.
Oh wow!
Where we did the whole interview where I told him my father's name is Farooq, and so by mistake I might call you that, and he just played along. It was just so much fun, once you have the great Shah Rukh Khan playing along and going hammer and tongs, giving it back. It's not like you can be as juvenile as you want, infantile as you want, and he's enjoying himself. And then it's like just like 2 kids in a class, he's just having a good time, pissing off the others. All these guys with their research who've got questions and all, and we're just having an innate conversation. It's great fun, Sadly, it didn't work as well as it should have, but
yeah,
it's a great.
But
film, I love it.
Yeah, I think it's since gathered like a little bit of a cult following because it's always playing on TV. So I'm sure there's a reason why, right? So.
Also, that Letterman interview that we spoke of, if you want to show India in a good light, I think that's something that they should show. Tata Sky could play that instead of some stuff that they put on.
I agree with you, Cyrus.
Just show snippets of that because what a great ambassador he is for the country. He speaks beautifully. Everybody's proud of him. He walks the walk. He talks the talk. I mean, he's liberal. He's secular. He's artistic. And I won't say he's saved women or, made breakthroughs or whatever, but women are proud of him, which is something very rare.
And women connect with him. I think that's the thing. But I'll tell you a funny story. Recently, there was another sort of foolish thing about, him being at Lata Mangeshkar's funeral and nonsense that ensued. It was really funny. Someone I follow in the book called me after, and I was telling her, well, so many people are so proud of him. They're supporting him as being secular. She said, after a pause, she says, he's secular, but he's also very sexy. So let's remember that.
So that's what secular shortens into, is it?
Yeah, like bringing the sexy into secular, as someone told me recently.
I can see for the liberal woman, the secular man is sexy, so it works out. Ouch. That's quite a pull. By the way, did you attend Lata Mangeshkar's funeral, Silvery, as a celebrity of sorts?
Yeah, I was right there. You must have seen me. I also I prayed in the air, and then I spat in the wind, and then there was some backlash.
You know the rules. You wore the dark glasses at the right time. You put your head down. You put your pallu on at the right time.
Yes.
It's all about there's a process. It's there.
Yeah,
you can go step by step.
Of course.
When you attend a famous funeral, celebrity's funeral or whatever, you have to have all your steps down correctly. When to put on the dark glasses to cover your eyes, which are not crying. When to put the pallu on or the something on top, because most of
but I was crying. I was crying when Lata Mangeshkar died. For sure.
Yeah, you were crying.
So
he was in a traffic jam like me, so that was
damn it, I can't reach.
Exactly. Damn it, really. Once again, elite India brought to its knees because our cars can't move. But that's really a story for another day. Don't start me off. Write a book on that.
My favorite was when there was sealant on Hrithik Roshan's ceiling. I don't know if you saw it. He put up a picture, and you know how there's seepage in Bombay houses because everything is damp during monsoon. Yeah. And I remember watching some Instagram picture that Hrithik Roshan had put up, and his wall had that same seepage. I thought, this is why I like Bombay. It's like an equal city that the seepage will reach everyone's home.
They're just like us, celebrities.
So what you're saying is that everybody's fucked is a good philosophy, is what you're saying in a way.
But
so then why
it's better than
all that? Huh?
No, but it's better, Cyrus, than some people being extremely, like that gap. Yeah. You should feel like there's some.
The disparity has been bridged because even the great Hrithik Roshan has bad walls. Fair enough. Yeah. But not Silvery with his 11 cars and his huge bungalow in Powai. Damn,
15 walls. Yeah, correct.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
All right.
Two bathrooms per room, is that necessary? Just to show off. I'm so rich, I pee twice.
Half here and half there. Don't like once and once.
Don't make those jokes. That's what happens to us when you reach 45, 50. You actually do it in installments. So don't make those jokes, bro. It'll come back to haunt you. Never say that when you're young. Enjoy the flow.
Okay, I jinxed it, I think. Yeah, shit out.
To another level. Listen, the book is called Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh. And it's we've already discussed it threadbare as much as we could. Please go and buy it, read it. And we can't wait to see what we get from Shrayana in part 2. What would be part 2? Is there any idea?
Yeah, I do, but later. It won't be about a celebrity. Yeah, it'll be about fun.
Is there another guy you admire? Any other Bollywood star or sports person or politician, statesman?
So the other people, I think many other people. So no, most of the people, in fact, Tarun mentioned him. I admire him, Barack Obama tremendously. Just how he writes, his leadership, everything that he's done.
He looked really good because the guy who followed was really bad. I felt.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah. And then actually, funnily, I know this is a guy many of us may not have heard, but he's a writer who I think everyone, if people are interested in love and reading about love, there's a psychotherapist called Eric Fromm who's writing
famous.
Yeah, I love him. He no longer, but I've just been obsessed with his writing and his work. And I think he really helped me out in strange ways. So yeah, those are my
Adler, Viktor Frankl, anybody else?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's
so same school of thought. Maybe DU and where I studied, whatever I studied is a similar course. Maybe that's the reason. Yeah. What about you, Silvery? Anything you want to say? Last words?
I don't mean Eric Fromm. I recommend Eric Fromm also.
Eric from Switzerland.
Yes.
Which is where Shah Rukh's movies were shot. Many a time and off back in the day.
True.
All right.
True.
Yep. Okay, guys. 11:22 on my watch, which means it's time for us to end the day. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yes, we can end it. Yes.
Can you show a copy of the book if you have one, just as we say?
I do not. I'm actually not.
I only have it on the phone.
Oh, but it's everywhere. If people just look up Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh, it's there.
Okay, it's
I do not have a copy right now. It is honestly on the internet.
I know what I'll do. I'll put it up on the next writer's podcast. I'll just say, please, understand that we have to help each other in this business, and we don't have your book, but we'll use this one. Yeah, fair enough. Done. Right.
Yes, but thank you so much, Cyrus. It was such a pleasure.
Our pleasure.
It's a thrill. Thank you, and thanks, Antrik.
Thank you so much.
And thanks, Shah Rukh. Bye bye.
Yes. See you. Bye.
See you.
Okay, catch us on any of the podcasting apps, please. We beg you, we need you. Send us your questions on Twitter on Cyrus Says In, or you can email us, even if you're not female, on whatcyrussays@gmail.com.
You're the people pleaser, right? Oh, yes. Or then desperately seeking the one? Oh, wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough. Oh. So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode. Oh, no. And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode is out every Monday and Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, as well as all major podcasting platforms.
Hello and namaskara, ನಾನು ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿ ತೇಜ್. ಪರ್ಸನಲಿ ನಂಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್ ಕೋಚ್ ಆಸ್ಟಿನ್ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್, ಒಂದು ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಟಿಪ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸೂಪರ್ ಫೇವರಿಟ್. ಈ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾದಂತ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್ಸ್ ನ ನೀವು ಕಲ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಲೈಫ್ ಕೂಡ ಆಸಮ್ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮ್ಮ ಇಂಟೆನ್ಷನ್. ಸೊ ಕೇಳಿ ದಿ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್ ಕೋಚ್ ಪಾಡ್ಕಾಸ್ಟ್. ಇವಾಗ ಬರೀ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ. ದಿ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್ ಕೋಚ್ ಕನ್ನಡ ಪಾಡ್ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರತಿ ಸೋಮವಾರ ಹಾಗೂ ಗುರುವಾರ IVM ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ.